everybody. Welcome to the Angela Anderson Show, where we help moms live their dream while taking care of their family. I am your host, Angela Anderson. I'm so excited to be here with you today. Now, this show is a result of a virtual summit that I hosted during the summer rather, of 2022. It was called Get Your Life on Track, Walk in Your Purpose. The focus was on mothers who want to identify their purpose and live it fully while taking care of their family. So for 14 days, I interviewed top speakers and influencers who shared information and great tips that assisted mothers in finding their purpose, pursuing their goals, and living their dream, all while taking care of their family. If you see the theme and if you've watched this show, you know that's what I'm all about. We can do it, ladies, while taking care of our family. So there was such a popular demand. So I created this talk show where I will continue to empower moms to see their value, understand their importance, and reclaim their identity. So today I have a special guest with me. Her name is Vanessa Bentley. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Vanessa Bentley, formerly Vanessa Londino, is a licensed professional counselor in Nashville, Tennessee. She received her bachelor's at the Tisch School of the Arts at New York University and her master's in counseling from Trevecca Nazarene University. Vanessa's specializations include relationship skills, true self, false self identity issues, and the development of unconditional self love. These are all amazing topics, ladies, that we can learn from. Vanessa's been practicing for over 12 years. And when she's not practicing psychotherapy, she's reading, she's cooking, enjoying the restaurant scene in Nashville, or hiking. That's awesome. And I'm excited that she's here. But before we bring her out, we're going to go to a quick commercial. We'll be right back.
Someone once said that life is a journey. Every now and then I convince myself that I have it all figured out. All of a sudden, life throws me a curveball and I find myself between a rock and a hard place. Through it all, the pervading theme is that God is constantly pursuing me. Just when I thought I knew God, He reveals Himself to me in a different way. I now realize that His purpose is to achieve a deeper level of intimacy with me, no matter what it takes. His main concern is the end result, which is to live with Him in eternity. He loves me that much, and the same holds true for you.
Just When I Thought I Knew God, it's a devotional book that I wrote. It's available on Amazon and Kindle. If you don't have a copy, grab a copy for yourself. Let's bring Vanessa on. Hey, Vanessa.
Hi, Angela. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for coming. I really appreciate you. So I want to get right into it. Vanessa, you are a licensed counselor. And tell us a bit about your story and why you decided to become a licensed professional counselor.
Sure. I always had I would call a back burner interest in psychology. Growing up, I was outwardly very gifted in the arts. So I sang and I played the piano. I sang better than I played the piano. And I went to school for the arts. So I went to the Tisch School of the Arts at New York University and had an outstanding experience. And I was working in professional film and theater by my senior year. And so that's sort of the trajectory of my life. But what would happen was I would be on stage doing a role and I'd be backstage having some really deep conversation with somebody about their inner world. And I'd say, oh, hold on, that was my cue. And I'd run out on stage and do my scene and then run back. Say, okay, what were we talking about? So I had this really, really, just innate curiosity about the inner workings of people. And then in my early 20s, after some challenging situations in my family of origin growing up, my family is on both lines descended from immigrants, and immigrants are survivors. They come to this country very often. They don't speak the language. They don't know the customs. They stick together in clans And so family is everything for immigrant families. And while that forms a really tight bond, there are a lot of deeper layers of meaning and relational dynamics that do not get attended to because you're too busy trying to get an education. So there was a lot of love in the family system, but there was trauma that was passed down to me from my parents, from their parents, from their parents. So we had transgenerational trauma. And eventually, if you've ever experienced anything like that, it catches up with you.
Right.
And I was in my early 20s when I started realizing that like my coping mechanisms are not working. And so I started seeing a therapist then, and it was sort of the collision of two worlds. Like I was bringing my performing arts self in New York City to this therapist's office. And then I was finally experiencing in real time this whole body of knowledge that I had fallen in love with so many years before. And I looked at her one day and I said, Mary, do you think I could do what you do? And I remember it like it was yesterday. She said, Vanessa, I think you'd make a marvelous therapist.
Oh, definitely.
That seed got watered. It wasn't planted there. It got watered. And I went through a pretty messy divorce. Most of it my fault, the mess part. And again, my coping mechanisms were all over the map. I had a lot of behaviors that I had habituated into my life that were attention seeking. They were by their very nature, very self-focused because I was focused on protecting myself.
Right.
And those do not work in a healthy relationship.
Right.
And so I went through a really messy divorce. And on the other side of that divorce, my mother had passed away in my late 20s. The divorce happened right in my early 30s. I was sort of free. And I prayed about it. At that time, I had taken a long break from spirituality and religion. And during all of that time, you know, I think God uses the most broken times in our lives to speak to us because it's then that we hear God.
Yes.
And I was drawn back, I would say, through, that's a whole other story. There's a million things to say about that. But I was drawn back into a relationship with God that was finally not based on fear, but on love. And when I really committed my life to God was about 2 months, maybe 3 months after my divorce. And then I knew it's time. So I toured around Nashville. I was living in Nashville at the time and visited several graduate schools, picked one program and dove in, finished what was a 3-year program in 2 years, graduated with a perfect 4.0. And I just knew I was in my zone. I was finally in my flow.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. And something I didn't mention in the beginning, Vanessa and I are both from New Jersey, and we knew each other as kids. And so when you talk about the singing, the playing, because we used to do some of that singing and playing together on the piano. And, you know, you wrote a couple of songs too. I remember that.
Got me to Nashville. I was sort of still in the arts. I still had one foot in songwriting, and I came here. And within 6 months here, my CD was on hold at one of the labels on Music Row. Like I was already sort of gaining traction, and I knew I was sitting in this executive's office on Music Row, and he's like, look, love you, love your work. We'll get you with some great writers here in town. We're going to beef up your songs, but you have no following in Nashville. All of the people that know your music are in New York. So we've got to get you a fan base here. And I remember sitting there in his office, and this is sort of, I think, relevant for your audience because sometimes the paths that we go down are not our path. It's the path we're given, not the path we own. And so I'm sitting in this office and my hair's down to here and it's all like, you know, rock and rolled out. And I got my black eyeliner on and my black motorcycle jacket. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I remember thinking consciously in my head, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Like it was very much my parents' dream for me, which I appreciate. I was good at it. I got pretty far with it, but it was never meant to be the deepest calling. I don't believe it was God's gifting and calling on my life. I had to come into that actually through quite a bit of pain.
Right.
And very often that's the price we pay, I think, for the true path. But, you know, when we're talking about true self, false self, and I'll dive into this a little bit, you know, so much of what allows us to know ourselves in a therapeutic environment is we tell our own stories. And that's a lot of what therapy is the therapist being the non-judging witness and sort of the absorbing place for the story of the client, whether that's a story of love, sorrow, trauma, victory. You know, sometimes this is the only place where clients can tell me how well it's going. Because it's very hard to share victories with friends. Sometimes they don't absorb them well. They're envious, they're silent, they don't give us the feedback we want. Right. So a lot of people, you know, think about therapy, oh, you go and you talk about your pain, but I am a witness to triumph in a way that very few people understand, because this is actually a safe place where you can shine and it's a safe place where you can be broken. And in those places, in that non-judging witness that is the therapist, we start to hear our own voice. We're not editing it. We're not adjusting it for our environments. We're starting to hear our own voice, and the therapist is going to act as the mirror of that voice.
Wow. Wow. As I sit here and just listen to you speak, it's profound, Vanessa. The words that are coming out your mouth, because it's something that you don't really think about, and perhaps for some of the moms out there that are seeking therapy or that want to, I think that was an incentive to those who know that they should, and it being a safe place, and being a mirror, and all of the things that you just said. Wow. Just wow.
Yeah, where I was trained, and I made a really intentional decision when I got out of graduate school. I wanted to be trained by veterans. I didn't go out on my own. I didn't open a private practice. I sort of knew where I was in the field, which I think was a grace given to me, because I tend to be impulsive and rush out and do things too quickly. But there was a voice inside me that very wisely said, learn from the pros first. And so where I did my internship and my practicum, and then where I was hired and I worked for several years, was a place called, and it's since changed names, but it used to be called the Pastoral Counseling Center for Healing. Or I'm sorry, I got it wrong. The Pastoral Counseling Centers of Tennessee. But the tagline of the organization was seeking to embody God's healing presence.
Wow.
And that has never left me.
Mm-hmm.
That has never left me. The other day I was praying about something that, I was sort of afraid to pray about. I didn't quite want to get that naked with God about it. And what I heard in my heart was, talk to me, child, no fear.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could give that same encouragement to everyone who walks in the door of my therapy office, just talk to me, no fear.
Right.
No fear in truth. We don't have to fear the truth. We actually should rightfully fear the lies we've been told and the lies we tell ourselves. And that gets a lot to the true self, false self journey, because a lot of what we have to do, and this is ongoing, this is not like a one and done process, it's ongoing,
right,
is we dismantle the lies. And these are lies that we told ourselves through how we were treated in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
These are lies we've told ourselves through misperceptions that we have. I mean, we do not perceive everything clearly in our life. We misperceive all the time,
right,
because we're seeing through our own biases. And so what therapy, and I think just good life work, whether that's through prayer, through therapy, there's so many tools, therapy is but one. What we're trying to do is get to a really truthful place and allow that to be the good, the bad, and the ugly. So a lot of people are like, well, I just want to know the truth, and they want to edit everything out of their lives that they don't want to face. I'm like, you can't form a true self unless you're willing to look at what we call the shadow.
Yes.
The shadow is the part of yourself you don't want to admit. The shadow work that I did in my life revealed and exposed in me the desire that I had for power over other people, how I enacted behaviors that I thought would give me power over other people. Now I could tell you the sob story of being the youngest child in a family of 4 daughters, and it was a matriarchy, and I was the youngest girl.
There you go.
Disempowered. I had no voice in my family. So I was like, the pretty happy little performer, but I had no voice. I was not taken seriously. I was not respected. So I look at my adult life and I think, my gosh, I see all the ways that I was compensating for that. And I think so much of what we do when we form a dream in our life without self-knowledge, what we don't realize is that we're just forming a dream that's going to compensate for all the things we don't want to see about ourselves. And that's a lot of what I was doing as an actress. I remember being in a therapy session. Again, this all kind of goes back to the knowledge of the self.
Right.
In a therapy session with Mary. And it was real quiet in the room. And I remember it was in Manhattan, and her office overlooked the Empire State Building. It was on 34th between 5th and 6th. And I looked out her window and I looked at the Empire State Building and I said, I know why I act. And she said, why? And I said, because when I'm up there, you have to listen to me. You paid to listen to me. And from that point forward, I never wanted to act again.
Wow.
Never wanted to act again. I was like, I'm not doing this for a great reason. I'm doing this for glory. I'm doing this for attention. I'm doing this because I'm so insecure, because I didn't have a voice growing up, that I'm projecting my voice to 2,000 people
Wow.
on these huge stages. But I lost the love for it because my ego
Mhm.
was getting sorted out. And what we do when we enter into a growth process is we sort of open all the rooms in the mansion that is our self. You know, we
Mhm.
sort of go into this one room and it's like, oh, it's sunny and pretty in here. And then you go into another room, you want to shut the door. Like, I don't want to see anything in there. Very often those rooms are tied to pain and trauma.
Right.
But what we do when we do therapeutic work, inner work, and I honestly think that we can do this with really wise women in groups. I think we can do this with wise women in mentoring relationships. If they've done their work, they will guide us to do our work. I think therapy is kind of a shortcut, but I do think these places, these spaces of freedom and honesty are available in good relationships. You know how it is. You have a conversation with someone, you get gut level real, and you leave and you're healed. You know, you get that clarity, you feel lighter, you feel seen, known, unconditionally loved.
Right.
What my therapy does with people, and I see both men and women, is what I'm trying to teach them to do is develop a love for themselves that's unconditional, no matter what they see, no matter what they've done, no matter what they experience, no matter what they stumble or tumble into in their lives. They have a relationship with themselves that can stand the test of time. And I think so often we talk about marriage in that context. You know, I'm going to love you no matter what comes. Well, can you say that looking in the mirror?
Wow. Wow. And that's the unconditional self-love. You know, a lot of times, Vanessa, I have a master class, and when I coach moms, I talk about that very thing. I word it a little bit differently, but just the fact that that there's this word out there, self-care, that's you know thrown out there in so many different ways and aspects, but it's not just getting your nails done, getting your hair done, and all this other stuff. Okay, that surface, like
Yeah.
what you're saying, the unconditional love part, and just prioritizing yourself. Not that is not selfish. You have to take care of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
in this way. So, in your practice, and you've been doing this for over a decade. What are some of the challenges that you have seen women, whether it's moms or just women in general, face in their families?
It's a great question, and it's a broad question. I'm going to throw out just a thought on self-care before I segue into my thoughts on that.
Please do.
Self-care arises if it's good self-care, meaning if it restores you. Self-care should restore you. It should renew you. It should replenish you. It should not redo you. It doesn't need to redo you. It needs to renew you. And in order to practice effective self-care, you need to know yourself. So think about how basic that is. When the gas light comes on in your car, okay, that light indicates that in order to care for your automobile, you need to put gas in it. And you know that a certain mileage, your car needs an oil change. There are so many things we can point to where we receive indications that direct us to a specific, precise replenishment tool. We don't know ourselves. If we don't know, I'm getting short-tempered, I need X. I'm getting physically drained, I need X. It could be something as simple as a 20-minute power nap, or I might need some protein. Not carbs, protein, like even things like that. In order to practice self-care, you've got to know yourself, because you need to know the signals that are coming through your body, right? Your body is like it's like the dashboard of your car. It's going to give you signals all day long that are going to be telling you what you need, not only physically. And I do this all the time with audiences when I teach emotional health. I might say, okay, when you're hungry, what do you need? When you're thirsty, what do you need? Hydration, right? When you're lonely, what do you need? And there's usually silence. When you're ashamed, what do you need? Silence. We don't know how to care for ourselves emotionally if we don't know what we feel.
Wow,
Does that
Vanessa.
make sense? So now let's move into a space where we're talking about women and moms, and even in a society where women have more options than ever about how they live and how they structure home life and work life and dream life and everything else, those options, the more options we have, the more anxiety we have about them, and the more anxiety we can have about whether or not we're doing any of them any well.
True. True.
So what we're looking at in self-care is a problem that I think women specifically face, and that the pressure is still on women to do it all. Right? But to me, the bedrock of being able to build a life on purpose, not be handed a life, not watch TV and see what celebrities are doing and structure your life after Hollywood stylists. What do they know? Right? To build a life that resonates with you, in which you feel that your life, your dreams, your family is a manifestation of you, not what you've been taught to be, you have to take the time to know yourself.
Wow.
That's where I think women are getting thrown off track, because we're inundated. We are bombarded. It is actually, I'm going to say, an assault on our mind. Do this, look like this, buy this skincare routine, this degree, this balance, this life hack, this home hack. How much can we take?
Right.
And so there's this pressure to not only do it well, but here's the big part: make it look effortless.
I'm laughing because that's mom life right there, right?
Make it look effortless. You better show up to that play date with the perfect tossed up, I just rolled out of bed like this. Like, it's not realistic.
Right.
Not realistic. So I would say the first place we start, and a little bit goes a long way, if we can find a therapist. Therapy nowadays, you can do it online. You can find a therapist in your area. It doesn't have to be expensive. A lot of insurance covers therapy now. And if you did one session a month, a little bit is better than nothing. But if you don't do therapy, you have to allow yourself to be in a space where you can be transparent. If that's alone, that's great. But I'll be honest, most people can't be transparent alone. Not for a while. They have to build the relationship with yourself to ultimately be intimate with yourself, because people hide alone, But in a therapist's office, you got somebody looking at you going, come on.
Right.
What's going on, So that's the first piece. The second piece I think that I see in women is a pathologizing, which means simply to declare something to be a disease. Okay? Pathology refers to disease. And what women do typically is we pathologize our emotions. Now, men do this too, to be fair, but they do it in a very different way. Women pathologize, or women make themselves the problem when they have emotions and they feel guilty about their feelings, and they feel ashamed about their feelings, and they feel angry about their feelings, and they don't know what their feelings are for. Women are by nature more relational. We have to be. The body's ability to house, birth, and raise a child renders our brains differently wired than the male brain. That is a fact. It's been a fact for a very long time, and neuroscientists have proven that over time. Okay. But when women make their emotions the problem, and they suppress them, and they deny them, or they just ignore them for the sake of being chipper, happy, happy mom, what happens over time is they either get depressed. And what does the word depression means? It means to push down. We're pushing down our feelings. We're pushing down the signals, right? We're shutting off the dashboard. Right. The dashboard is working, but we're turning off all the lights, and then we wonder why we're miserable. Another experience that we have when we suppress emotion is anxiety. And I see this all the time in women. I'm anxious. I'm so anxious. And I come in, I'm like, well, let's start teasing this apart. Is it fear? Is it anger? Is it shame? And then once we start really getting a little bit more granular with those emotions, we start to see that the anxieties, it's there to tell you something. It's there to tell you, like, slow down. You got to pay attention to you.
Right.
It's a signal. It's not your enemy. It's not a problem. It's not a diagnosis. I don't diagnose in my practice at all. I use no mental disease diagnoses at all. People ask me, what's wrong with me? I'm like, problematic childhood. And they might say, well, what's my diagnosis? And I'll say pure courage.
Wow.
That's the label I'm putting on you. Perseverance. That's the label I'm putting on you. Because these diagnoses don't mean anything. These are signals that the body is sending us that we need to pay attention to ourselves. And when we bring ourselves back into self-love and balance, our clarity to see our world around us and to attend to the needs around us is very, very fine-tuned.
That's awesome, Vanessa. And that, as I'm sitting here and listening, absorbing everything that you're saying, and one of the things that stood out to me in terms of women, we don't really know ourselves, and a lot of times we hide, and we don't know what we need, and that takes work. And I'm thinking, we know what our children need, right? Like for those moms that are out there that have little kids, when they cry a certain way, we know, oh, that is the I'm hungry cry. When they act a certain way, okay, now they're hangry. They need they need something.
Yeah.
Shake a snack, something. It's like we know what our kids need better than what we know what we need. And we need to do exactly what you said, get personal with ourselves, get intimate with ourselves,
Yeah.
and work this out.
Yeah.
I think a lot of truth would be revealed, a lot of aha moments, and a lot of I am this way because, and I behave this way because.
Yeah.
And once we know that, then we can. You remember the cartoon? What was it? G.I. Joe. Knowing is half the battle. Right? Back in the day, knowing is half the battle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once you know something, then you can actually do something, take action.
Yeah. Well, along those lines, if we're in relationship, and not all moms are in, partnerships, but if we are in partnerships, let's talk a little bit about what self-knowledge does in a partnership. Because the way that children communicate before they're verbal is they communicate through behavior and expression. They're totally communicative. They're just not verbal yet, right? So they're communicating through crying. They're communicating through facial expression. They're communicating with their bodies, right? And then you get into toddler years, and there are words. There's a verbal expression of self, but it's very limited because the vocabulary is limited. Right. And so what I do when I teach these classes is I might say, okay, everybody in the room, let's play a game that we all play with children, and somebody played with us. Point to your nose, point to your chin, point to your ear, point to your elbow. And I'll say, why do we do this with kids? Well, so that they know their body parts. Well, why is it important for them to know their body parts? Well, so that they can tell us if something's wrong. Right. But how many relationships do I see as an adult people who have no language for their inner world? They don't know how to say, I'm scared. I'm alone. I feel lonely. Right? So what do we do when we don't have language? Adults do the same thing children do. We act our emotions out. And this creates a situation in adult partnerships where we expect our adults to do what moms of young children do. We're expecting our partner to know, when I act this way, I need this. And what I tell my couples when I'm working with them, I'm like, you are not each other's parent. It is time to be an adult, develop an adult vocabulary so that you can say, when you do blank, I feel blank, I need blank. That's on us.
Right.
But in the absence of that, we're literally expecting our partner to treat us like a mother treats a baby in infancy. Oh, that's the hungry cry. Oh, that's the I'm lonely way that she answers the phone. Oh, that's the I'm embarrassed way that she just walked out of a room. Like, we can't do that to each other. And it goes both ways. I'm not, blaming women. I'm saying it goes both ways. But until we develop an adult emotional vocabulary for ourselves, we don't know how to give ourselves what we need, but we are also very limited in asking for what we need. Just the other day, I had a conversation with my husband, and that's why you see the name change. So for those of you who want to find me online, I'm still Vanessa Landino. So I'll give you those resources before we end. But just getting into the Vanessa Bentley, I just haven't updated everything online. But I had a conversation with my husband just this past Sunday. And he walked out onto the deck, and I was out there reading, and he looked at me and he's like, hey, how's it going, babe? And I just, that like, can we talk? And he was like, deep breath, and he sat down with me, and I said, I'm feeling disconnected. And here's why I'm feeling disconnected. I had this situation in my life where I really kind of wanted you to know what I need, but I kind of feel like you didn't. And, so we talked about it, and I said, but I'd love your thoughts on that. And he said, I hear you. So the first thing he did was validate me, which was hugely important because it made me feel heard. He said, I hear you, babe. And he said, I think you know these things intuitively as a woman. I don't. Man. So, but this was the most beautiful thing. He said, if you tell me what you need, I'm responsive. I will respond to you, even though I don't intuitively know this about you, because you're a woman and I'm a dude and my brain doesn't think that way. And when I thought about it, I thought, first of all, that's valid. His brain probably doesn't think that way, number one. And number two, the love so often is in the responsiveness, not the knowledge of you. It's in the willingness to respond to you. So we see a lot of women who don't have an emotional vocabulary, who were never taught how to know themselves emotionally, never taught to ask for what they need, because to your point, Angela, women aren't supposed to have needs. You're supposed to meet everybody's need around you. So when women ask for what they need, they're piled on by shame.
Right.
I'm not allowed to ask for what I need. And so we just want people to know what we need so that we don't have to be uncomfortable and ask for it.
Wow.
And what we've got to do is start to break through that barrier, break through the lie that you don't have needs. Let me tell you something. Human beings in the animal kingdom, okay, I'm being totally biological here. In the animal kingdom, human beings are without question the neediest creatures on the face of planet Earth. So if you are needy, ladies, welcome to the human race. As a self-appointed ambassador of the human race, I'd like to welcome you to the human race. Okay, we're needy. Get over it. It's normal. We need to start asking for what we need so that we can experience those needs being met, and that's what bonds us. But we're not kids. We don't expect people. We can't expect people to just know what we need by our behavior.
Right. And I love the permission that you're giving all of us. Like this is us. This is us. It's okay to need. It's okay to ask. It's okay to express your needs. No one is a mind reader.
And we go one step further beyond okay. It is necessary. It is human. It is God appointed. You will not read the gospel and notice a man in Jesus who has no needs. That man does not exist.
Wow.
He asked for what he needed unapologetically. Guys, I'm so sorry. I know you have somewhere to be, but will you please stay in this garden? And no, stay here and keep watch with me.
Right.
There was no apology.
Right. Perfect example. Vanessa, tell us about your book, The Toolbox.
Love to. The Toolbox. So this originally, I was going to write for men, which is why it has kind of a masculine, this might be turned around on, yeah, there we go, like a masculine, it looks like a workbench in a garage. And I came to the idea for this book after a very bad date back in my dating days. But the idea was, I was on this date and this guy was real mechanical. He could fix anything. And he had this garage full of all of these tools, but he really didn't know how to resolve conflict. He didn't know how to listen too well. And I remember one day driving away from his house and I thought, man, if that guy had a relational toolbox, like he's got a mechanical toolbox, he'd be great. And then I just was like, wait a minute, is there a relational toolbox? So I was doing couples counseling already at that time, but I had a lot of shame because I was divorced. I was like, I can't write a book about relationships. What do I know? But I realized, and ladies, I think we can all say this with some confidence, you learn a lot from failures.
You sure do.
You learn a lot from failures. I have no issue at this point in my life admitting all of the things I did wrong in that marriage. So I started looking at the couples and I started looking at sort of the coping behaviors that they were using to protect themselves, which is what we do. When we get into conflict, we don't think, oh, let's connect. We're in conflict. We think, no, I'm going to self-protect. We're in conflict. So we do things like we shut down, we storm off, we people please. We do all kinds of things that just keep us safe behind our wall, right? conflict. And I started really working with my clients on their coping mechanisms. And then I started thinking, okay, is there a tool to replace the coping mechanism? So over time, I don't know how many people told me in therapy, you need to write a book. Vanessa, you need to write a book. So I wrote a book and I titled it The Toolbox. And the subtitle is The Tools We Need to Build Relationships and Repair Them When They Break. And if you think about a house as a metaphor, we've all lived in different houses. Some of those houses were very structurally sound. And either you've walked into one or you've lived in one, a house that wasn't really built well. Things break, things are constantly breaking down. And then what happens is when we want to fix something, if you don't know how to do it, you might hire someone to do it, which is when somebody calls a couples therapist. Okay, we don't know how to fix this, so we're going to hire. I'm like a relational handyman is what I am.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or we try and what I call jury rig it. Like, oh, this thing's falling down, just kind of put a pole up there. And we do this in our relationships all the time. Like, we don't get to the root. We don't know how to actually really talk our issues out and heal them. Grow the trust, grow the intimacy, and know each other better on the other side of that conflict than we did on the front side. We don't know how to do that. So we have all kinds of ways that we move past conflict. We sweep it under the rug. We get too busy with the kids. We just push it away. And the relationship either stagnates or it gets a millimeter apart. A millimeter apart. Millimeter apart. And when you've been married for 10 years, that's not a millimeter anymore. That's 10 feet. And then the sex life falters. And we stop emotionally trusting each other with our day. And then we intellectually stop trusting each other. And we're not telling each other what we think anymore. And then that 10 feet becomes 10 miles. So these tools, every tool in the book is what the opposite behavior would be. Okay? So instead of a world where we avoid conflict because we don't know how to do it well, or we scream and yell at each other like 4-year-olds in a sandbox, I've done that. I'm not judging you. Okay. I've done that.
We all done it.
I have done every wrong tool. Okay. I've done them all wrong. All right. And it took me a while and it took me a lot of self-discipline and training to do them well. And I don't do them well all the time, but I try. When we have a replacement tool, now we have something to use. Right? Instead of pushing a pole up there to hold a wall up, now we have an actually appropriate tool to fix this. So that's what the toolbox is about. Every chapter is a different tool. I had about 20 tools in the beginning. I narrowed them down to 12, and these are the 12 essential tools of relationship. Things like empathy. Don't try and be intimate unless you have empathy. You won't. Empathy is it. Empathy is so big. Chapter 10 is confrontation, how to maturely and effectively, productively confront one another when we need to. And sometimes we need to. Chapter 2 is listening. And I would say if I have a place to stop with the couples that I work with in couples sessions, we don't move beyond listening until I know they're really listening to each other, because most couples aren't.
Right.
They don't know how. So that was the idea for the toolbox. I do toolbox workshops. If you want to follow me on Instagram, my handle is so easy. It's Vanessa the Therapist. But you can follow me on Instagram, and I'm going to be doing an online toolbox workshop in the fall where I will take participants through the book myself, and we're going to kind of workshop it online in sort of like a group therapy format online. So you can follow me on Instagram for more info about that. But that's the book.
Wonderful. Can we put the book up? There we go.
And again, that is my maiden name. But that's where you'll find it. You can buy it on Amazon.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And what I like about that, just the relationship tools, I would imagine that also can be used in different types of relationships, not just couples, but mom,
100%.
child, parenting. It just it works in all different ways.
Yes.
So
here's a powerful thing that happens when we are reactors. Okay. And before we learn how to respond, we react. That's just what human beings do. And typically that reaction is self-protection. And there's a million ways to do that. Women, aren't always fighters. Some of us fawn. We people please. We surrender. We submit. We don't have our voice. But there's a really powerful moment that happens between mother and child, between husband and wife, between adult child and adult parent, when instead of arguing or instead of wanting to leave the situation, whatever we do, when we go, you know what? I really want to hear you right now. So all I'm going to do is listen. And I'm going to make sure that when you're done speaking, that I reflect back to you everything I heard you say, so that I make sure that I got it, because what's coming out of you right now is the truth of your heart and the thoughts of your mind. And those are precious to me. And why are they precious to me? Because they're precious to God. And I'm going to try and listen to you. And I'm going to take my ego, which is right here on the tip of my tongue and wants to argue with you, right? I'm going to take my ego, I'm going to put it on the windowsill behind me for now, so that I can listen to you. This is a powerful tool. It changes everything. The first Toolbox workshop I did in Nashville was incredible. I mean, people left the workshop. This was the most life-changing experience we've ever had. It was so much fun. We did so much work together, but it was mostly couples and singles. And I'm doing another one likely in August in Nashville. And I'm going to market it not just to couples or singles, but I'm specifically going to send the word out to adult children and adult parents, because families need to heal. And when those older generations who didn't have therapy, they didn't grow up with therapy, our parents didn't know. I mean, they just had no idea, did the best they could in a lot of ways. But when they start learning better tools, when you've got an 80-year-old father who looks at his 45-year-old daughter for the first time and says, I'm listening to you, talk, he starts to heal. And that changes the same way that I said in the beginning that there's transgenerational trauma. There is transgenerational healing that takes place. And now generations afterwards know how to sit with their emotion and simply listen to another person speak their mind. And that's just one tool.
That's beautiful. Beautiful and powerful. So, Vanessa, we're going toward the end, and I'm just enjoying listening to everything you're saying, and it's edifying to me, and I'm sure edifying to the audience. But we have to wrap up. So, if you were to leave moms with who are on this journey with a word of encouragement or a success tip, a single action, what would it be?
Well, I want to say personally first, I honor you. I applaud you for doing the bravest work, which is raising children. I pray for you. And I would say this, because I know so much of this show is about bringing dreams to life while doing all the busy work of mothering, right? The deepest dream of our heart is contentment. Before we empire build, I want us to remember that the deepest dream of our heart is to live in a body and to live a life that we love, that we're proud of, and that's a reflection of who we truly are. It's a manifestation of yourself. So as you go about being the world changers that you are, and if you're raising children, you're a world changer by definition. As you go about that, remember that the deepest dream you can have for yourself is to look at your face in the mirror every single day and say to yourself, honestly, come what may, I've got your back. Come what may, I love you. I'm with you. I know you. I've known you through every season of your life. You are beautiful to me, and that will never change. And when you can cultivate that relationship with yourself, the accomplishment of your dreams becomes a byproduct.
Love that. I know for me, I'm going to watch the playback for this show, Vanessa. That was just simply amazing. And let's put up there again how we can connect with you on Instagram. Tell me, you're in Nashville. Do you do virtual sessions with your clients?
Yeah, so I can't practice psychotherapy out of state, but I can do what's called mental health coaching. And you can contact me through Instagram for that. My website is still VanessaLondino, LONDINO.com. And that will change soon, but you can contact me there. But Instagram is pretty easy. I check it really regularly. And like I said, starting in September, I'm doing a Toolbox workshop. Yep, that's it. A Toolbox workshop online with 4 couples. That's it. It's going to be very intimate. You're going to get a lot of me. It's 8 weeks for an hour and a half. Thursday nights is the online forum for 8 weeks. So if you want to be part of that, check my website, follow me on Instagram, and you'll have an opportunity to do that. But the book is for sale. Toolbox workshops are right now happening in Nashville. So if you happen to be in Nashville, you want to come to one. But yeah, that's how to get in touch with me. Mental health coaching is different than psychotherapy a bit, but I can do that out of state. And yeah, I think tune into my podcast. That's a great way to hear from me. The Vanessa Londino podcast is all it is. I just use my name for everything. So that's been up for a while. I think we're up to like 200 something episodes. We've been at this for a while. So the podcast is a good way to hear from me as well.
Wonderful. Vanessa, thank you so much for being a part of this show, for just enlightening us. Our extended version of the Angela Anderson Show, much well worth it. And for the moms out there who want to pursue your dream and you're kind of stalling, you might be fearful, apprehensive, whatever the reason, I want to help you with that. Schedule a free consultation with me, www.chatwithcoachangela.com. Let's level up. Let's get you where you need to be. And I can definitely help you with that. And for everyone else, if you liked what you heard on this show and you've been watching the Angela Anderson Show, subscribe to my YouTube channel. And the information is right there on the screen. It's the Angela Anderson Show. And I also can be found on Spotify, the audio version. Follow me. It's the Angela Anderson Show. So remember, just click that subscribe button. We would love to have you. Information such as this and so much more. So until next time, everyone, this has been great. Take good care.